Hi, welcome to episode 5 of Dr. Lex. This week I'm going to be looking at how to loop music and whole sections with a selector, how to count how many objects of a particular colour you have in a scene, and how to put an imp face on a character that you've made. Enjoy! This comment is from Sean Blaine.
So I found this tutorial trying to find out one thing the in-game tutorial didn't teach. I was wondering how you manipulate a timeline so that only a portion of it loops continuously. I essentially have a slow intro portion of the music that builds and then drops into the more upbeat portion. Problem is I only want the upbeat portion to loop. I can't figure it out whether it needs logic or connections or what. Any help would be appreciated.
Right, so we've got a timeline here. And I've got some music. I've got an intro. Let's turn the timeline on. I've got an intro, a repeating bit in the centre, and then I've got an outro. So I've used the clips from Media Molecule. So you could make your piece of music and it will do this. You can get that piece of music to loop so it gets to the end. But what if you didn't want that intro to play on the loop? You wanted this part of the music to loop, but you didn't want this to loop. Right, there's no obvious way in the timeline in the music section to do it. So we're going to need some logic, and I've put a microchip down. Let's just turn this timeline off. And we'll turn this one on. So what I've done is I've divided out my music into 3 separate timelines, and I've coloured them so I know which bit is which. So there's our intro, there's our middle section, and there's our outro. And I want these to play in sequence. And I want some of them to loop, and I want some of them to loop together after that. So I'm going to put in a selector. We've got 3 pieces, so we're going to need 3 on our selector. And I'm just going to wire our outputs to each of the power sockets on our timelines. Now, if I was to leave it at that, it would play A and then stop. That was all it would do, because timeline A is set to play once. This is set to loop, and this is set to play once. Now, I'm going to get this selector then to play the next one in sequence. So I look at on end trigger for the first piece, and I'm going to wire that to B. And that is going to now play B after A has finished. Now you notice that we had this as a loop, so let's see what happens when I try it. And there we go, it loops perfectly fine. However, we want C to play after this is played twice. Now, if I was to just do on end trigger to C, let's see what it does. So it didn't loop, it just went straight to the next one, because as soon as it got to the end, before it had a chance to do the next loop, it went to C. So we need some way of looping that middle section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a counter. Let's take away that wire. And this time what we're going to say is on end trigger, we're going to increase the count on this counter, and we want the target value to be 2 because we want it to play through twice. And then we'll wire the counter full to the C. So now this is going to play through twice before it goes to C. Let's play that. See, that's filling half up. Now it's gone to this. Now we want it to loop these two ad infinitum, so over and over and over again without stopping. So we're going to say when this is finished, we're going to go back to B, but we also need to reset this counter so that it will do the loop again. So now we've got a loop. So let's play. Plays the first one. And it plays this one. Now should go back to this one. And then back to this. Right, now you may have noticed there's a single note that gets played out of this timeline when this timeline starts. That's because there's like a 1 frame delay between the message that this is going to this and it looping. So it plays the first note. So the only way I could work out how to stop that is to actually turn the sound off. So I'll put in a keyframe and I'm going to make the sound at -100. And we can't do it on the counter because that's the thing that's causing us the delay. So I'm going to use a timer. And so when this gets to the first on end trigger, we're going to set off a timer and it's going to run for 4 seconds. I've worked this out based on the piece of music that I've got. And then on pulse, I'm going to pulse that. And when this is on end trigger, I'm going to reset the timer so that it will go again. So this time then, intro. It's going around. There you go, you didn't get that last note. Let's check this again. Timer's off. There we go. So that's how we get our loops going. This is a little bit of an annoyance, but once you've worked it out. Now, let's say you've got 3 of these running, then you would need to, instead of running it from the on end trigger here, you would have to, so we'll move that counter up to 3. It's going to loop 3 times. So now we need a calculator. And the current count, if the current count equals 2, whoops, then we're going to start the timer. So if the current count equals 2, then we're going to start the timer. So let's try it this time. Intro. It's 1. This is 2. And the timer starts. And that keyframe just muted it. Okay, so that's how you would do that. This comment is from Ignacio Concha.
I want to have a multiplayer variable that show how many blocks are painted with the color of each player. I solve how to paint the blocks, but I could not set the variable to have a different number for each player.
Right. Well, I don't normally do multiplayer things because I don't really have the option to try these things out, so I can't test and experiment with them. So I don't normally answer questions on multiplayer things because I actually don't know. But in this instance, they said they've got a mechanism for their player to change the colour of blocks, and they just wanted to know how to count how many blocks of each colour there was. So and how to make them into variables. So I've got this worked out. So in this tutorial, what I'm going to show you is how to change the colours of blocks randomly using a selector, and how to count how many of those blocks you have. So I'll just turn this on. I've got a randomizer, and it's randomizing the coloured blocks, and in this occasion it's giving me 2 of each, 2 whites, 2 reds and 2 blues. Let's turn it on again. This time I've got 1 red, 3 whites, 2 blues, and that's reflected in this number here. So I've got 3 colours, and these are counting how many of each colour there actually are. So let's see how this is done. So each of the blocks has got exactly the same microchip in. So when you make your block, you make your block and the microchip, and then you clone the block like so. Inside it, I've got a randomizer. If you're playing a game where players are actually changing the colour manually somehow, then all you need to do is either wire the players up to one of these input ports, so that will activate the correct port, or you send a number to the active port that reflects the colour you want. So don't forget, a selector starts at 0. It doesn't start at 1, it starts at 0. So that's 0, 1 or 2. So if I wanted this one to be active, which is the red colour, if I wanted it to be red, then I can either send a number 2 to this active port, or I can send power to input C with a wire here. So there's 2 options on changing that block to red. Right, so how is this done? So in the A selector, I've got a keyframe, and this keyframe is changing the colour. So this is how you change the colour here when you create your keyframe. And I've also got a tag. This one's called white to reflect the colour of my keyframe. And then we've got another one which says blue, and this is my blue keyframe, and this is red. This is my red keyframe. So these tags are only active when these ports are active too. So when this block is white, it's activating the white tag. Now over here, I've got 3 trigger zones. These trigger zones are selecting a tag to detect, and this one is detecting the white tag. The detection area is everywhere, so the whole scene. And I've just moved number required up to a really high number. You would have to know how many blocks there's likely to be, so that you don't make sure that there's plenty of numbers in here. Put the maximum in. I'm not sure what the maximum is. Let's try 1,000,000. There we go. That's the highest. That's a really weird number. 65535. That's the highest number of things that a trigger zone can detect. So what it's doing is it's looking for white tags, and that amount of number detector is then going to our number displayer, and that's displaying the number there. And it's also going to a variable modifier. That number is going into there, and it's set to be set and continuously set. And that is going to affect this variable called white. I've only done the first one, so I can do another one now. So we put in a variable. We're going to call it blue. We'll set that to 0. At the moment that's set to 1,000 maximum, but you've set that to whatever the maximum you want it to be. We're going to put down a variable modifier, and we can change that to blue, set, And then the operation value is going to be the number detected by this sensor. Oh no, that's the red sensor. This sensor. That's the blue sensor. Right, blue to blue permanently. There we go. So this variable now is going to take all the blue ones. So the reason to make it into a variable and not just leave it as a number displayer is so that you can pass it into another level. So you can make this persist in Dream, and you put a variable of the same name in your next level, and you can continue adding and adding and adding as you need to. So that's basically it. It's that simple. So let's try this. Here we go. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 whites, 3 reds, and a blue. Go again. 5 blues this time. 7 and 1. So if you wanted to use something with some randomized colored things, you can use this randomizer. But like I say, you can either tell which active point it is by sending a number to this, or by activating one of the ports that you need with wires from this side. And that is it. This comment is from Reformed Identity.
Can you make a tutorial on how to have the imp's face on the head of a character, for example like Connie does?
Alright, okay, so we've got a puppet here and we've got Connie. Now, if I go to play mode, if I possess my player, the imp goes inside my player. I can't see, and I can move my puppet around. That's fine. But if I possess Connie, these little eyes appear on Connie, and my imp is now Connie's face. So how do I do that with my puppet? Right, so we're going to scope in, and we'll get the platform up, and you will see the puppet logic. We're going to open that. So L1 and square, L1 and cross, sorry, and then we want to open up our controller logic. So that's L1 and cross again, and then L1 and square to open up our controller sensor. We now want the imp option, and at the bottom we've got position visual, and the default is for the imp to just go inside the body and you not see it anymore. But there is an option for face. So we'll put on the face, and you'll see in the gizmo there is a little face. We just pull that up. We'll change the orientation of that because this is the same orientation as our chip, which is lying down flat. So we have to change the orientation, and we'll put the imp face there. There we go. So now we're going to play mode, and we've got a little face just like we had with Connie, except when I move, you'll notice those eyes don't appear to be with the body at all. The body's bouncing up and down, those eyes are pretty stiff. That's because the controller sensor is in the microchip is in the platform, and the platform, it isn't jigging up and down with the puppet. So somehow we need to get the controller sensor in the head of our puppets. So now you could move just the controller sensor, but I don't recommend that. Let's just not fiddle about with this too much. So instead, what we're going to do, I'll just close that down, is I'm going to scope into the puppet logic. I'm going to remove it from the group. And then I'm going to scope into the head. So now I've just got the head selected. And then I'm going to place I'm going to press L1 and then let go. And now our puppet logic is in his head. So now, all the angles are all funny. Right. We're going to open up our controller logic, go into our controller sensor and our imp. There's our head. Now we've got to orientate it correctly. Now we want that to be on the head. Round about there, I think. We can adjust it after. Let's try it. That's okay. It's a bit high, I think. Maybe we'll move him down a bit. Down and across a little. There we go. And now it moves with the puppet. So you don't get that disconnect and the bouncing up and down. So that's true for any puppet. So if you've got a puppet that's like Connie, you will just need to put the microchip that you're making on there, on the part of the body where you're going to put the eyes and everything. Otherwise, we've got this. Now, the good thing about this setup is that you can fiddle about with visible body on target. Now this time, instead of just the eyes, it's the entire imp. So I can put the imp there. So I've put it on his back. So if you had a backpack or something, you could have the imp inside it, and you would turn him round. You can turn him round because you've got an orientation, so you can see where his eyes are. So you could have him on a backpack like that. There we go. So your imp's stuck on your back like that. Or you can also change the size as well as the orientation. So we can make the imp really small. And we can stick him on his shoulder like this. Now, at the moment, this is scoped into the head. To be really, whichever part of the body you're actually wanting this imp to sit on or scope into, you need to put your controller sensor there. So, at the moment, but that works fine. But if he had a really movable head, see, it's connected to his head, you probably wouldn't want that where it's moving around like it's like got imp earring on. You would have to scope into your puppet logic, remove from the group, scope into the chest area. So L1, let go of R2 and L1, there we go. So now your imp can sit on the shoulder, and I can move the head around and it doesn't affect it, so it's actually sat on his shoulder like that. So there we go. And also, of course, you can make it nice and big. So you can have it on his chest like that. Move him about all over the place. So you can have an imp t-shirt. It's entirely up to you what you do. At the moment, I've got the entire body. Again, you go back to the face. So it doesn't. The imp doesn't actually have to be. The eyes of your puppet. Like I say, it could be part of the t-shirt design or something. There we go. So you can move it around. There we are. That's how you stick an imp face on a puppet. Hope you enjoyed Dr. Lex number 5. As always, leave comments on any of my videos with your queries, your suggestions for tutorials, how to do type things, and I will make these Dr. Lex videos. I can't guarantee how often they will be. They won't be any quicker than once a week, but it really does depend on how many comments you leave and whether the things you're asking for are complex and require a full tutorial, or whether they're little simple things that take about 5-6 minutes to do. So keep those comments coming, and I'll catch you in your dreams.